Hey guys, Victor here again, coming at you with another retro deck profile for the September 2011 format. And today's focus is going to be on the more degenerate side, as we're covering Nurse Burn FTK, which is a deck that literally revolves around Darklord Nurse Reficule, or as you may also know her as, Nurse Reficule the Fallen One, which literally just makes anything that gives your opponent life points burn them instead. So, with that out of the way, let's jump straight into the deck profile. So, the monster lineup for this deck is actually really small because it literally just revolves around 3 Darklord Nurse Reficules. This is going to be the main card in your deck. You want to have access to it pretty much as soon as possible because without it, you will not be winning the duel. However, I decided to take the deck one step further and actually play some other cards that allow us to, actually play the games in different ways. And starting with that, we're going to be playing 3 Tour Guide from the Underworld, along with the 1 Sangan. I feel like, honestly, this deck is really underrated in the fact that normally when you'd see it, you only see the Dark Lords and nothing else, right? But I feel like the Tour Guide engine just adds like another dimension to the deck because it allows us to abuse cards such as like Allure of Darkness, which we will be playing, to banish our Reficules to draw 2. And then because of the Tour Guide, we can either go into like Levier to bring it back and special summon it, or we can just go straight into the Sangan, which, when it's destroyed, we'll be able to also search out the Nurse Reficule. So just like the added consistency boost that this card offers is honestly huge. And even then, if you don't want to have access to the Nurse, right, you can still just make another rank 3 in the form of like Leviathan Dragon and just pretty much change your entire playstyle into like beat down. And Leviathan Dragon being 2,500 attack points, it really does help a lot. And after that, we're also going to be playing 2 Maxx, just because it's Maxx, and when your opponent sees that you're playing a degenerate deck, and they're definitely not going to want you to draw into cards. So, yeah, like this card just becomes extremely powerful, especially when your opponent is trying to go ham, and can just more than likely just end their turn while also gaining you more resources. So with that, that's the monster lineup. Really small, like I said earlier, but still, it gets the job done. So with that, we can now move on to the spell portion of the deck. Now, to kick off the spells, we're going to be playing 3 Pot of Dualities. This is a really slow deck, and even though we do play Tour Guide, it's not the main focus of the deck. So what we want to do is use Pot of Duality to thin our deck to search for key cards like the Nurse Reficule in order to actually, like, effectively burn our opponent. And that's why we play 3. And you probably never really saw this deck all that often in the past, mainly because it's surprisingly expensive, especially with like Pot of Duality, right? Because it was only a secret, and then you had it as like a tin super, I believe. And the tins were super hard to get. So even with the reprint, Duality was difficult to like actually come across. And same goes for like Maxx and Tour Guide, being what, like Tour Guide was like 100 a piece at the time. Maxx were stupidly expensive too. Yeah, and then Nurse Reficule didn't have the reprint either. It was a GX video game promo. So just like little things like that quickly added up, and like the cost of this deck pretty much just made it so that it wasn't really worth playing. But yeah, that's a little history lesson out of the way, so let's continue on. So in addition to the 3 Duality, we're playing 3 Upstart Goblin. Fantastic card because it basically becomes draw 1 card, burn your opponent for 1,000 life points while you have Nurse Reficule. And then we're going to be playing 3 Soul Taker, which is a really cool card because it's a 1-for-1 removal that burns your opponent for, well, it doesn't burn, it gives your opponent 1,000 life points, but since we have Nurse Reficule on the field, it's going to be burning them for 1,000 instead. And this card is really cool because it's an example of making a card miss timing, right? And this is really effective against decks like Heroes because you'll be able to destroy something like Elemental Hero the Shining, and then after it's destroyed, you give them 1,000 life, which means the Shining will miss timing and they won't be able to get back their resources. So yeah, it's just some things like that matter a lot in this type of format where missing the timing is actually fairly important compared to like modern Yu-Gi-Oh where nothing actually misses timing. And then after that, we play a bunch of 1-0 spells. Reborn, in case like our Nurse Reficule gets like destroyed, or even if like Sangan, right? If you have a Sangan engraved, you can reborn it back, crash it into an opponent's monster, search Nurse Reficule, and then try to go for game off of that. Darkhold, because there are a lot of monsters, and your opponent will try to swarm the field if they can. 1 Heavy Storm. This is going to catch a lot of people off guard because they're just going to assume that you're going to set 5 cards every time, right? And it's really important, especially going second, because you don't want to deal with cards like Royal Decree, for example, which is a very popular side deck option. So being able to clear the Decree and then setting all 5 of your back row or whatever is really huge. And we're also playing the 1 MST for the same exact reason. And then lastly, we play the 1 Allure because it's at 1, and like I said, you can combo this with your Nurse Reficules because you just draw 2, banish it, and then you use your tour guides to go into like cards such as Levier to bring back the Nurse Reficule, and just little combos like that are honestly like insane for this deck. And with that, that's the spell portion of the deck, and now we can finally move on to the trap section. If you can't get to your Nurse Reficules, it's okay because we have a backup plan in the form of Bad Reaction to Samoichi. Much like Nurse Reficule, it does the exact same thing, except it's a continuous trap, so you have to be really careful with this one because with how popular cards like Mystical Space Typhoon are, say you go Chainlink 1, gift card, Chainlink 2, whatever, everything that just gives your opponent life points, and then you make this one the final Chainlink, if your opponent is good or smart, they'll just hold the MST and just destroy this, and then you end up giving your opponent like 10,000 life, and it's impossible for you to win. So what you want to do is you pretty much want to activate your burn cards one at a time, and then that way you can ensure that if your opponent does have the Mystical Space Typhoon, you won't be losing, essentially. So yeah, but yeah, if you can't get to the Nurse Reficule, this is just as good, just a little bit more risky, I guess. And then, as mentioned earlier, we are of course playing 3 gift card. You can give your opponent 3,000 life points, but if you have Nurse Reficule or Samoichi, it's burn your opponent for 3,000 life points. So if you open Nurse Reficule plus 3 of these, as long as your opponent didn't have like a Book of Moon or something, you just insta win the game. Then we have the 3 Paths of Destiny. No matter what, this is gonna make your opponent burn for 2,000 life points. So yeah, it basically becomes your opponent takes 2k life, and then you have the option to either gain or lose 2k depending on what you flip. And then after that, we're going to be playing 3 Dimension Wall. This card's really good. It's like a Magic Cylinder, but unlike Magic Cylinder, it's actually at 3. And what it does is if when your opponent's monster declares an attack, and basically you only want to use this when your opponent attacks you directly, because you basically make it so that they take the damage that you would have taken. And this is really important because there are a lot of really strong monsters in this format, whether it's like Thunder King, Reborn Tengu, any extra deck, any boss monster, whatever. And just one well-timed Dimension Wall is more than enough to win the game. And the same thing goes for Magic Cylinder. Just be aware, you don't really want to set too many of these at once. You'd prefer just to set like 1 or 2 of them. You'd much rather have like your chainables like on the field at all times. And it's mainly because if you decide to set like all your Magic Cylinders and your Dimension Walls, you could easily just get blown out by Heavy Storm, and yeah, we don't want that. So we're just going to take like the slow roll approach, set 1 or 2 at most, and then yeah, continue on with your game. And then after that, we're going to be playing 2 Dark Bribes. This is to help ensure that if we do have like the 3 gift card Dark Reaction to Samoichi play or whatever, we're not going to lose to a single MST, because we're going to have the built-in protection to negate whatever is trying to destroy our card. And yeah, this is just to help ensure that we can actually win the game. And then lastly, we play 1 more trap, being the 1 Torrential Tribute. It's just nice to have, especially because since this is like a, I don't want to call it like a troll deck, but it kind of is. And your opponent's going to assume that everything's like a gift card or some kind of burn card, right? So they're more than often than not going to overextend. And with Torrential Tribute, you can punish them from, you know, actually overextending into like something that they thought was not a threat. And sometimes that's also more than enough to win the game, because you're getting rid of a bunch of your opponent's resources, and in this format, resources 100% matter. So yeah, with that, that's the main deck. It's 40 cards, and now we can go on to the extra deck. When it comes to the extra deck, there are only 2 cards that matter, being Levier, the Sea Dragon, and number 17, Leviathan Dragon. I've mentioned these cards previously, and they kind of just help the deck out tremendously with what they can do, because Levier, as I stated, is able to bring back your Nurse Reficules that you've banished off your allures, or even then, like, your opponent is probably going to be doing a fair amount of banishing as well. And if you're playing like a Chaos deck, right, you're going to have a lot of options to choose from. And then for Leviathan Dragon, it's just in case like you don't want to go into Levier, you want to have play like a Beat Stick Yu-Gi-Oh, you can. So you just summon that, and then it's 2,500, and then your opponent has to waste a lot of resources that they much rather save. And yeah, there's not much to say. Obviously, you fill the rest of the deck with 13 other extra deck cards. If you're playing Starlight Road, you played a Stardust Dragon in here. You can play number 39 Utopia or Roach in case you want to like overlay your Nurse Reficules, whatever. But for the most part, it doesn't really matter. And with that, that's the entire deck. It's 40 cards main deck, 15 cards extra deck because you want your opponent to think you're playing a normal deck. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys next time. See ya!